Hi everyone, Steve G8NFZ here. This video is the second of a series of 7 describing the operating functions of the ICOM IC7300 all-mode HF transceiver. They describe the UK version throughout. European and American versions differ slightly in areas such as frequency allocations. In this second video I start by continuing the coverage of some more controls that affect frequency. Here's the menu button. We'll use this to reach some more controls. Let's press this and see what's next. Here's the menu that the button opens. Let's look at what the memory button does. This is page 1 of 26 pages listing the contents of the memories. Each is named, and by touching the icon at the right, the details can be edited. You can choose to edit the name of the memory, write the current channel information into the memory, it will overwrite anything already there, or clear the memory. We can edit the scan group status of the memories here, just as we could in the memo pop-up. This is a good illustration of how the radio may have more than one way of reaching an adjustment. Touching the small star icon to the left of each entry cycles through 1, 2, 3 or none. The number indicates a scan group, and we will see shortly that we can select these groups during a scanning operation. All of these are in scan group 1. It is possible to delete all scan assignments in one go, incidentally. Not the channels themselves, thank goodness. We need to be careful. Back to the menu, and this time we call up Memopad to manage the memory pad entries. Let's look at what this Memopad option does. My Memopad at the time I captured this screen had just 3 entries. I hope that you can see that it saves frequency, mode and filter settings. It doesn't store splits, RIT or Delta TX. With the 5 soft buttons at the bottom of the screen, I can scroll up or down through the list, delete one entry, delete all entries, and expand the list, as I have done here. Choosing a Memopad channel is done with the arrow buttons. Each press steps through the list. It also remembers where you started from by adding a current channel to the list in a temporary slot so that it can be returned to. Long pressing the physical Memopad button adds a new channel to the list. Since it overwrites old content, there is no real need to do deletions. Here we've stepped to 7.0442 and the screen is showing the temporary memory of 3.650, which is where we started from. Up arrow twice will take us back there. These options allow us both to use and administer the Memopad, but we still need the physical Memopad button to add a channel. Back to the menu. Let's look at what the scan button offers. Here's the scan screen. We're using VFOA. It shows the program scan range at special memory C1 to memory C2 from 500 kHz to 30 MHz. The starting point of the scan, which was 3.65 MHz, appears in the recall button. The span of a possible delta frequency scan, centered on the start frequency, and in this case running from -5 kHz to +5 kHz, is also shown. The prog button starts a program scan. The delta F button starts a frequency-centered delta scan. The fine button, which only works once the scan is in progress, slows the scan down to very fine steps. The scan can be set, using the set button, to stop on receipt of a signal and either freeze or continue after a pause. Here I've touched the delta F span button and adjusted the range to ±10 kHz. The options available are ±5, 10, 20, 50, 100 and 500 kHz and 1 MHz, each therefore giving a total span of twice that figure. The program scan indicator flashes during a program scan, quite a difficult screen to capture. So much so that pressing the button at the wrong time, I even managed to capture the capture screen. Now I'm running a Delta F scan. You can see that I started from 3.6974 MHz. It shows on the recall button, and I'm scanning just a 10 kHz range around it. The Delta F scan indicator flashes during the Delta F scan, and program and its range are dimmed. Touch anything to stop a scan, and touch the recall button to go back to the starting frequency. If we start a scan from a memory rather than the VFO, then the options change. We're offered a memory scan, and by default one that includes all three scan groups. Choose Memo to open the Memory Scan submenu. You can choose to scan all memories or only selected ones. Choose Cell No to opt for Group 1, 2, 3, All or None. Choosing None scans all memories. Choosing Select allows you to clear the scan groups either selectively or all three. This is where you need to be careful. Here the memory scan is running. It's run around to the lower end of the radio spectrum and is currently checking on Radio 5 Live on 693 kHz, which is coming in at S9+3 by the way. Here we've used Cell No to choose only scan group 1, and then the scan visits only the chosen group. Memory 3, you will remember, is part of scan group 1. The indicator flashes to show that a select memory scan is in progress. I've turned up the squelch, look at the little triangle above the S meter, to just below S9 to get above the noise and ensure that the scan doesn't stop unnecessarily. Back to the menu, and now the one you've all been waiting for. Let's look at some of what the scope button offers. I am showing the spectrum scope in its fixed mode. A complete frequency range is shown, which is your choice. The only stipulation is that it cannot be wider than 1 MHz. Here I've chosen to have a range from 7 MHz to 7.2 MHz, covering the entire 40 meter amateur band. The scope has a fixed icon on its top line. There are some signals showing on the scope and waterfall. The scope grid is 25 kHz per division horizontally and is always 10 dB per division vertically. The current receive frequency is shown by the dotted line. It's bang in the middle at the moment on 7.1 MHz, but it moves sideways as the radio is tuned. This is page 2 and has the soft on-screen button options: 1 to change to button set 1, Edge to choose which preset range will be used, Hold to freeze the scope and waterfall display, Center Fix to swap to center mode, and Expand Set. The display you are seeing is already expanded. For the moment, we'll touch 1. The middle 3 buttons have now changed, and we have access to Ref, which allows us to set the reference signal level for the scope and waterfall to allow refining of signal appearance, Speed, which allows us to set the speed with which the selected range is being scanned, and Marker, which shows the transmit marker on the display, especially useful if split, RIT or delta TX are in use and the transmit frequency fits within the displayed range. If we choose center mode, then the Edge button is replaced with a Span button. Touch and hold Span to set the scope to plus and minus 2.5 kHz. Each subsequent normal touch expands the span, choosing from plus and minus 5, 10, 25, 50, 100, 250 or 500 kHz. As you tune under this option, the whole scope and waterfall scroll sideways, and the receive frequency stays in the center. And here's the most whizzy function of all, using the scope. Here we are in fixed mode and tuned about 3/4 of the way across the scope at 7.15 MHz when we see a signal appear just below 7.1. You get used to the appearance of signals. This one is single sideband. Touch the scope screen on the new signal, and a box appears like a magnifier around the area you've touched. You can now be much more accurate with your touch inside the box. You're aiming for the right edge of the signal because it's lower sideband and the carrier point is higher in frequency. I use a gentle sloping touch with a soft tool, as I've said before. Once again, I emphasize that the screen is not depending on capacitance effect to detect touch. Mechanical touch with a soft pointed object will do the trick. And the radio jumps to within a few hertz of the new signal, requiring only a tiny adjustment of the main tuning dial to resolve it. This is very, very smart. Amazingly, this also completes a run-through of the 28 ways that you can affect frequency selection on the IC7300. Please make a note of any questions and hold on to them until you've seen all 7 videos, as I may well give you the answer in one of them. In video 3, I shall be looking at other important controls, beginning with operating mode. Until then, 73 G8 and FZ Golf 8 November Foxtrot Zulu. Off and clear.